It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we cover the very latest in property news. Yes, we love to give you all of the information, the trends, etc. And we do that 7 days a week as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon. We are into another weekend, aren't we? Yes. Saturday, May the 11th. And what a week it's been. And if you have a look at that Tuesday decision, one of the big talking points, they are always talking about these unpleasant surprises, something that could go bang, particularly in the near future amid the ongoing inflationary pressures. Has the likelihood of an interest rate cut this year all but gone? And the budget, now that is expected to project a 3.5% growth in real household incomes for 2025. And that is a number for sure to pay a lot of attention to, because the flow-on effects will either be positive or negative. That is depending on how that will all play out. And I am talking mortgage rates. And since we are talking mortgage rates, let's go to Anthony Landau, the Managing Director at Equilibria Finance. Good morning, Anthony. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, you mortgage king, you.
Good morning, Craig. Great to be here again, mate. And as you said, there's a little bit of nervousness from the RBA as they highlighted, albeit rates held, but they are concerned very much about the upcoming budget creating more inflationary pressures and inflation becoming entrenched. So the suggestion might be that rates may not go down this calendar year. In fact, some are even talking, and I don't really have a counter view on that rates, we might even see an increase at some stage this calendar year as well.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems to be a little bit split, and finance to look at in more depth and the rebound that we have seen. I want to talk about the investors with you this morning and what is driving the 20% jump in property investment lending over the last 12 months. So let's kick that off, because we know that there's been this huge sort of afterlife of COVID, and there was this lull period with investors sitting on the sidelines. We were talking about that last year constantly. So what's driving the rebound, do you think, at the moment?
Yeah, as you said, investors really did sit on the sidelines through COVID, through that big uplift in prices, and obviously while the rates were going up. So what's really driving this rebound is this increase in the number of people who are rent vesting. And that's being driven by owner-occupiers who are unable to afford a home in the area they want to live. So they're looking at properties in suburbs that they may not traditionally have looked at, in suburbs that they may not want to live in now, but they may want to live in the future. And they're buying an investment property in that area. So you have your traditional investors who are really all about the longer term capital growth. And we've got this new investor who's more about looking at buying a property as a stepping stone for the future that they may live in down the track.
Yeah, that is the real irony here, because there will be these investors that have done the rent vesting with absolutely no instinct or desire to live in that area, as you say. You know, it might be in a different state. And then circumstance catches up for whatever reason, and they find themselves having to live in this particular property. Have you found that with some of your clients?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is we're also seeing a bit of a shift in where investors are purchasing. Obviously, the capital cities, the units, the inner city areas are always very traditional areas for investors. But we're starting to see investors look at some of the outer suburbs where traditionally they might get lower capital growth, but they're looking at purchasing a house potentially with in mind, maybe we could live in that down the track, as distinct from buying an apartment that if they needed to upgrade, they'd have to sell that. So a lot of these investors or rent investors are now looking at buying a suburban house as distinct from a unit as their first investment property, and potentially down the track, they're open to living in that property as an owner-occupier dwelling. So their goals, their objectives, what they're looking for is a little bit different from your traditional investor who's all about the longer term capital growth, their cash flow and the rental yield on the way through. The other positive we're getting for these rent investors is they're getting the big negative gearing benefits. So it's helping keep the housing market strong. It's knocking some owner-occupiers out of the market because of this trend that's starting to happen and drive investor growth.
All right, well, we're talking to Anthony Landau. Sounds like the police are on their way. We'll come back in just a moment and we will talk more about property, more about mortgages after this.
Every week, real estate transactions take place as the market shifts month by month. And every day, we keep you better informed and updated on the Real Estate Podcast.
Hey, coming up towards the end of the show, I've got a bit of a tip for you if you're looking for something to watch on Netflix. And it is surrounding a sporting code of chaos that has been captured on cell phone cameras. So listen out for that. And if you're feeling the pinch at the checkout, if you're going to the supermarket today, you're not alone. This weekend's grocery shopping trip, it's just a roller coaster ride of emotions from supermarket shock at the escalating prices. And here's a really sobering thought. They tell us on average $100 these days might, if you're lucky, get you 15 things. So, yeah, everybody's feeling it for sure. And make sure that you park away from trying to drive into the entrance itself at the supermarket. It always amazes me how people like to get as close as possible. And then with all of the stress of buying, you get out and you find that you're in some sort of fender bender. So enjoy or try to enjoy that trip to the supermarket today.
Let's explore together the power of real estate. We keep you better informed and updated.
And we are into a weekend, a Saturday morning around Australia, and we've got Anthony Landau with us talking all things property and mortgages this morning, just before the break, talking about those rent investors, Anthony. But right now, let's actually talk about post-COVID with the property investors and just how that is at the moment unfolding. I mean, here we are, we're in May. You know, it's not going to be long before June, July. So how's it looking from your end in terms of having to deal with these clients of yours?
We are seeing a trend and an uplift in investors. Your traditional investor or your mum and dad building it as part of their wealth accumulation strategy, and it's very much an investment property that they're looking for the capital growth, they're managing the cash flow on the way through. But we are seeing post-COVID a sort of a new generation of property investors, if you like, who their first purchase might be an investment property rather than a home. They're typically more like your millennials, a slightly younger generation. They're making up close to 50% of investment activity at the moment, which is quite a new phenomenon. When you think about how we might think about a traditional investor, they might have bought the family home, they've worked hard, they're then looking at building a wealth strategy as distinct from a younger buyer looking to buy their first property, having all the challenges of affordability and going, okay, I'm going to get into the property market through this concept of rent vesting where they keep renting where they want to live and they're buying an investment in an area where maybe they'll live in the future, and they're more looking for the houses as distinct from the units. So up to 50% of them are now in that millennial sort of group or that millennial generation, which is a big shift in the market. And we're seeing that in our own client base with the conversations we're having with those faced with those affordability challenges, thinking about other ways of getting into the property market.
And the budget, we should talk about that because, you know, every commentator has got a different outlook when it comes to the impending budget. Do you expect the housing to form, as I would, a significant part of this budget?
Yeah, look, before every budget, you obviously get the leaks. So most of the details often known beforehand. So look, housing has to be a fairly significant part of it. The migration rates have been growing, as we all know. Australia's facing this chronic housing shortfall. The government's talked about building 1.2 million houses in the next 5 years. They've built 5,000. So that runway is getting longer. But yeah, they're talking about some initiatives around apprentices, providing free apprentices for those getting into the construction industry, because obviously labour's a challenge in terms of having the feet on the ground to put the properties up. And I think we will see some other initiatives to help with housing affordability, to help with some social housing and those sort of initiatives. But I think the big focus is going to be on the supply side in this coming budget in terms of trying to get more houses built over the next period of time.
And everybody knows, of course, from our conversations that you are a surfer, you enjoy your surfing. Let's turn to one of the sporting codes. Do you like soccer? Have you been a soccer follower, or I should say football follower?
Well, I'm probably a little bit like you, that when we were growing up, it was very much known as soccer. Like most Australian kids, I played soccer for a couple of years when I was younger and then moved into other sports, rugby and stuff like that. But yeah, soccer's grown a lot in Australia. A lot of my team follows some of the European soccer and stuff like that as well. So I guess I keep my ear to the ground is probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, well, the reason I mention is because it is a Saturday. If you're looking for something to watch on Netflix, it's always hard to try and surf through and actually find something that is good. Well, last night I watched a documentary just been released on Netflix, and it is called Attack on Wembley. It's a doco. This is the chaos surrounding the Euro 2020's final between England and Italy. Boy, thousands of these ticketless fans stormed Wembley, causing criminal damage and injuries. And it really did resemble scenes from past hooliganism, which we saw in the 80s, the 90s. Now, of course, it's very much magnified by camera phones and news coverage. So it's one that I can definitely recommend for you and for people listening to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I'll keep that one in mind. It's there's some good stuff on the Netflix with some of those documentaries. And as you say, a lot of that stuff now with iPhones, with cameras and all that is brought to life. That sounds like something to keep in mind for the weekend, because it's going to be a bit of a rainy one over here in Sydney by the looks.
All right, well, enjoy your weekend, enjoy a little bit of rain, so long as it's a little bit, not a lot, and we'll catch you back in a couple of weeks' time.
Sounds like a plan. Look forward to it.
Gain insights with exclusive conversations from real estate professionals about buying, selling and investing across Australia.
Number one is the recovery phase of the property market cycle will continue. Interest rate fall eventually. This may not happen till much later in the year. Property markets will become more fragmented. So these are a couple of factors that will definitely affect and are to look for in 2024.
What was the feeling leading up to this one from the clients and the people that you talk to in Queensland? Were people saying to you, well, if it goes up, that probably counts me out? How's the general sentiment in your state looking?
So the buyers that are really confident, they do have a good buying capacity, so they don't get affected by the interest rate hikes. But there are other buyers that are kind of their whole investment journey or property journey depends on the interest rate. So if the interest rate goes up, they're out from the market.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.